Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're journeying back in time to the wild frontier of early 19th century America, to a small farming community in Tennessee. We're going to unravel the story of what is arguably America's greatest ghost story, a haunting so intense, so well documented, and so terrifying that it allegedly involved a future president and ended in murder. This is the chilling tale of the Bell Witch. Our story begins in 1817 in Adams, Tennessee. The Bell family, led by patriarch John Bell Sr., were respected members of their community. They were hardworking farmers, living a relatively peaceful life on their 320-acre property. But that peace was about to be shattered by an unseen and malevolent force. It all started subtly, as these things often do. John Bell was inspecting his cornfield one day when he encountered a bizarre animal. He described it as having the body of a dog, but the head of a rabbit. He shot at it, but the creature simply vanished. That same evening, the family began hearing strange sounds outside their log cabin, knocking, scraping, and scratching noises on the doors and outer walls, as if something was desperately trying to get in. For the first year, these disturbances were mostly external. The family would rush outside, armed and ready, only to find nothing there. The sounds grew louder and more aggressive. It sounded like wings beating against the walls, chains being dragged across the floorboards, and heavy objects being thrown around. The family, particularly their youngest daughter, Betsy, started experiencing more direct torment. Her bedsheets would be violently ripped off her in the middle of the night, and she would complain of being slapped and having her hair pulled by an unseen hand. The entity was no longer content to stay outside. It had invaded their home. The family, deeply religious and terrified, initially tried to keep their ordeal a secret. They were afraid of being ridiculed or accused of witchcraft themselves. But as the activity escalated, they couldn't hide it any longer. They confided in their closest neighbor, James Johnson. Intrigued and skeptical, Johnson and his wife agreed to spend the night at the Bell home to see for themselves. As soon as the family went to bed, the spectral assault began. The Johnsons witnessed the covers flying off the beds and heard the disembodied sounds. Convinced that the Bells were being tormented by something supernatural, Johnson decided to form an investigative committee of local men to witness the phenomena. This is where the story gets even stranger. The entity, which had been a silent force of chaos, suddenly found its voice. It started with faint whispers, like an old woman humming hymns. Soon, these whispers grew into a clear, articulate voice that could be heard throughout the house. It would mock the family, sing songs, quote scripture verbatim, and hold conversations with anyone who dared to speak to it. When asked who or what it was, the voice gave a chilling answer. It claimed to be the spirit of a former neighbor, Kate Batts, who believed John Bell had cheated her in a land deal. The spirit declared, "I am a spirit who was once very happy, but has been disturbed and made unhappy." It announced its name as Kate, and it had one primary, terrifying goal: the death of John Bell Sr. Word of the haunting spread like wildfire. People traveled from hundreds of miles away, hoping to witness the Bell Witch. The Bell home became a bizarre, macabre tourist attraction. Kate, as the spirit was now known, seemed to relish the attention. She would entertain visitors with her sharp wit, reveal their deepest secrets, and engage in theological debates with ministers who came to perform exorcisms. She seemed to know everything about everyone who entered the house. Her voice could be soft and sweet one moment, then loud and shrieking the next. She could be in multiple places at once, her voice echoing from the attic, the cellar, or right beside a person's ear. One of the most famous visitors to the Bell farm was reportedly a man who would one day become the 7th President of the United States, General Andrew Jackson. Intrigued by the stories, Jackson gathered a group of men and a so-called witch tamer and set out for the Bell property. According to the legend, as their wagon approached the farm, it suddenly stopped dead. The horses couldn't pull it an inch further, no matter how hard they were whipped. The wheels were stuck fast, as if held by an invisible force. After several frustrating minutes, a disembodied female voice was heard, laughing and telling Jackson she would let his wagon proceed. Just as suddenly the wagon was free and they continued to the house. The witch tamer, boasting he could handle the spirit, was violently attacked that night, claiming Kate had beaten him senseless. A thoroughly spooked Andrew Jackson and his men allegedly left the very next morning, with Jackson famously stating, "I would rather face the entire British army than to spend another night with the Bell Witch." While Kate tormented the entire family, she focused her cruelty on two people, John Bell Sr. and his daughter Betsy. She mercilessly tortured John, causing him to have seizures and making his face twitch uncontrollably. He complained of a feeling like a stick being jammed in his throat, making it difficult to swallow or speak. Kate's voice would constantly taunt him, promising his demise. She also terrorized Betsy, especially concerning her relationship with a young man named Joshua Gardner. Kate vehemently forbade their marriage, threatening to torment them for the rest of their lives if they wed. The constant harassment and supernatural interference eventually took its toll, and Betsy broke off the engagement just as the spirit wanted. The haunting continued for years. John Bell's health steadily declined under Kate's relentless assault. By 1820, he was mostly bedridden. In December of that year, he fell into a stupor and couldn't be roused. The family found a strange vial of dark liquid in the medicine cabinet. When they brought it near the fireplace, Kate's voice boomed, "I gave him a big dose of that while he was asleep, and that will do the trick." To test the liquid, they gave a drop to the family cat, which died almost instantly. John Bell Sr. passed away on December 20th, 1820. Kate's voice was said to have celebrated his death, singing loudly and gleefully during his funeral until she was commanded to be quiet. Her mission was complete. After John Bell's death, the hauntings began to subside. Kate told the family she would be leaving, but promised to return in 7 years. True to her word, in 1828, the phenomena reportedly returned, focusing on John Bell Jr. for a few weeks before disappearing again. Before she left for the final time, she made one last promise, to return again in 107 years in 1935. While no major events were recorded in 1935, many locals in Adams, Tennessee, believe the spirit of Kate Batts never truly left. To this day, the area around the old Bell farm is considered one of the most haunted places in America. A replica of the Bell cabin has been built, and a nearby cave on the property, now known as the Bell Witch Cave, is a popular destination for paranormal investigators and thrill seekers. Visitors report hearing strange whispers, seeing shadowy figures, and feeling an overwhelming sense of dread. Some even claim to hear the faint echoing laughter of a woman carried on the night wind. The Bell Witch case remains a cornerstone of American folklore, a terrifying documented account of a family tormented by a vengeful spirit, a mystery that continues to captivate and frighten us over 200 years later. What do you think? Was Kate a vengeful spirit, a poltergeist created by family stress, or an elaborate multi-year hoax? Let me know your theories down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into one of America's most chilling legends, please hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next journey into the unknown. We'll see you in the next video. Stay curious and stay safe. Ever heard of a house so haunted it had to be burned to the ground? Welcome to the chilling tale of Borley Rectory, once dubbed the most haunted house in England. Though nothing but a pile of ash remains today, the stories that seep from this patch of land in Essex are as cold and persistent as the English fog. Let's pull back the veil and investigate one of history's most compelling hauntings. Our story begins not with a creaking door, but with a tragic legend. Long before the rectory was even built in 1862, a monastery stood on the site. The tale goes that a 13th century monk from the monastery and a beautiful novice nun from a nearby convent fell deeply in love. They planned to elope, but their secret was discovered. The punishment was brutal. The monk was executed, and the nun, she was bricked up alive within the convent walls. For centuries, locals whispered of a lonely, sorrowful figure in a nun's habit, seen drifting through the fields where the convent once stood. They called her the Nun of Borley. Fast forward to 1863. Reverend Henry Bull moves his large family into the brand new rectory built on the old monastery grounds. Almost immediately, The family began reporting strange occurrences. They would hear unexplained footsteps shuffling through empty hallways at night. More disturbingly, they claimed to see the ghostly figure of the nun, sometimes peering into windows, other times gliding silently across the lawn, her head bowed in sorrow. The Bull family lived with these phenomena for decades, accepting the spectral nun as just another, albeit unusual, resident. After Henry Bull's death, his son Harry took over the rectory in 1892. The activity seemed to escalate. The phantom nun was seen more frequently, and new phenomena began. The family reported the sound of a ghostly coach and horses pulling up to the house late at night, followed by hushed, urgent whispers. Were these echoes of the past, replaying a moment from the tragic elopement? Harry Bull even built a summer house on the lawn, hoping to get a better vantage point to watch for the spectral nun. He claimed to see her often from that very spot. For nearly 70 years, the stories were mostly confined to the Bull family and local villagers. But that all changed in 1929, when the Daily Mirror newspaper got wind of the tales. They sent a reporter to investigate, and with him came a man who would forever entwine his name with Borley Rectory, Harry Price. Price was a famous psychic researcher and self-proclaimed ghost hunter of his time. He was a controversial figure, part showman, part genuine investigator. When he arrived at Borley, the rectory was then home to Reverend Guy Eric Smith and his wife. The Smiths' experiences were far more aggressive than what the Bulls had reported. They spoke of phantom bells ringing, lights turning on and off, and small pebbles being thrown from unseen hands. It was during one of Price's early seances here that a new, more communicative spirit seemed to emerge. Through table turning and automatic writing, a spirit identifying herself as Marianne began to communicate. She claimed to be a French nun, lured to England and murdered in the 17th century. Her pleas were desperate. Mysterious messages began appearing scribbled on the walls, and scraps of paper. Phrases like, "Marianne, please help me get out," and "Marianne, light mass prayers." Was this the nun of the legend, finally telling her story? Or was it something else entirely? The sheer volume of phenomena reported during this time was staggering. Keys would fly from their locks, and objects would be hurled across rooms, often aimed directly at clergy who visited. The Smiths couldn't take it anymore and left after just 2 years. The rectory then fell to Reverend Lionel Foyster, his wife Marianne, and their young daughter Adelaide in 1930. The haunting entered its most violent and famous phase. The Foysters documented nearly 2,000 poltergeist incidents during their 5-year stay. Loud crashes, wall writing, and objects being thrown became nightly occurrences. Marianne Foyster, in particular, seemed to be the focus of the activity. She claimed she was repeatedly thrown from her bed, slapped by invisible hands, and locked in rooms. The messages scrawled on the walls now seemed to address her directly using her name. The connection was uncanny. Was the spirit confusing Marianne Foyster with the Marianne it was trying to contact? The sheer intensity of the poltergeist activity under the Foysters became legendary. Bottles were smashed, windows shattered, and the entire house seemed to be in a constant state of turmoil. But it also raised questions. Marianne Foyster was a much younger woman married to an elderly man, and rumors swirled that she might be orchestrating some of the events herself, perhaps out of boredom or a cry for attention. After the Foysters left in 1935, the rectory stood empty. This is when Harry Price made his boldest move. He rented the property for a year, determined to conduct the most thorough scientific investigation of a haunting ever attempted. He recruited a team of 48 official observers, a mix of believers and skeptics, equipping them with the latest ghost hunting gadgets of the day: cameras, thermometers, and fingerprinting kits. They were tasked with living in the rectory in shifts, meticulously documenting every single strange noise, temperature drop, and odd occurrence. The results of Price's year-long investigation were published in his book, The Most Haunted House in England. The team documented a range of phenomena, from strange lights and smells to the distinct feeling of being watched. While the violent poltergeist activity seemed to have subsided with the Foysters' departure, the underlying sense of a presence remained. The nun was still seen, and the phantom bells still rang. It was during a séance in 1938 that a spirit communicator supposedly predicted the rectory would burn down that very night, and the bones of a murdered person would be revealed in the ruins. The prediction was off, but only by a year. In February 1939, the new owner of the rectory, Captain W.H. Gregson, was unpacking boxes when he accidentally knocked over an oil lamp. The old, dry building went up in flames almost instantly. Borley Rectory burned to the ground. As the prediction foretold, the fire seemed to reveal a secret. During the cleanup of the rubble, small fragments of a human skull were discovered, appearing to belong to a young woman. Were these the bones of the murdered nun? For many, this was the final grim confirmation of the legend. Harry Price arranged for the fragments to receive a Christian burial in the local churchyard. But the story doesn't end there. After Price's death in 1948, researchers from the Society for Psychical Research published a critical analysis of his work, The Haunting of Borley Rectory. They accused Price of exaggerating and even faking some of the evidence. They suggested the wall writing was a hoax, possibly by Marianne Foister, and that Price himself was not an objective observer, but a master publicist who knew a good story when he saw one. This report divided the paranormal community. Was Harry Price a pioneering investigator or a fraudulent showman who exploited a family's tragedy for fame? The debate rages on to this day. Was Borley Rectory truly a vortex of supernatural energy, home to the tragic spirit of a nun and a host of other entities? Or was it all a combination of natural occurrences, psychological suggestion, and outright hoaxes, amplified by Harry Price's flair for publicity? The sheer number of witnesses, over 200 people who reported strange phenomena over several decades, is hard to dismiss entirely. Yet the evidence remains tantalizingly inconclusive. Even today, with the rectory long gone, visitors to the site and the nearby church report strange sensations. Modern paranormal investigators conduct EVP sessions near the ruins, and some claim to have captured disembodied voices and cries for help on their recorders. The ghost of the nun is still occasionally reported, a sad grey figure drifting through the quiet churchyard, forever searching for her lost love. So, what do you think? Was Borley Rectory the site of one of history's most authentic hauntings, or was it the stage for an elaborate, decades-long publicity stunt? The truth, like the rectory itself, may be lost to time, buried somewhere in the foggy fields of Essex. Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? A footstep in an empty house, a voice on the wind. Share your own poltergeist stories in the comments below. We'd love to read them. And if you're fascinated by Europe's most chilling tales, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more ghostly investigations. Thanks for watching. Stay curious.